So what we have in store for tonight is we're going to have welcome and introductions. Thanks to Reba. John Gostovich is going to read our preamble. We're going to hear updates from our 4 campaigns, updates from the fields, and then we're going to celebrate and protect our Wisconsin freedoms and future. I'll have a little section. We'll hear from Chris Hambuch-Boyle and Andrew and Roxann, who are county clerks, joining us tonight. So we've got a packed agenda full of goodness for you all. And let's be on mute as much as possible when we're not speaking. And don't hesitate to use the chat. If you have a question or anything, we're monitoring it. Karen's in there. We'll check it as we're going tonight, but we'll also make sure that we haven't missed anything at the end of the day. So feel free to use the chat if you have anything to say. And on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Reba for our introductions today.
It's fun to see people still rolling in. We always use this space to build our relationships with people we may not know. And so we take introductions seriously. And they're an important part about building the connective tissue in our organization that will allow us to be effective across our campaigns and together within Grow. Please drop in the chat today, as you can see on the screen, our introduction themes are your name, where you're from, that can either be where you live now or where you call home, and what you love about fall. You can drop them into the chat. And, ooh, I see squash soup is a great thing to love about fall from Janelle. Cool, crisp air, though it has been a little bit warmer than I think where many of us are accustomed to in October. Warm days, cool nights in a sleeping bag. We've got Grace, originally from Illinois. We've got people from Baldwin to River Falls to Menominee. Packers football bell says we're surprised. Ooh, Wendy, why don't you come off mute and tell us more? Wendy, you're from River Falls. Sense of excitement and change in the air. Say more about that.
Well, especially on days when the air is crisp and you can observe the changes that you're seeing around you with the movement of the birds. We've got tons of blue jays that are, blue jays that are catching peanuts. We put them out every morning at 7 and they're gone by 9 a.m. You know, so there's a sense that the change is in the air. Something different and new is happening.
That is beautiful. I wonder how many other people are paying close attention to their bird feeders at this time. I'm a little bit jealous. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I do not have a bird feeder I get to pay attention to. Patricia says she loves that it's her husband's birthday and that she was also married on the 16th, so one day before her husband's birthday. Welcome, Patricia. Lots of food, lots of fall air, lots of outside time. Bob Moline, is there a place you like to go camping?
There's not a place I don't like to go camping, but if, this time up north of Lake Superior or anywhere around Lake Superior, and state parks are so great this time of year.
That makes me really grateful. I am Reba Krieger. I live in Eau Claire, but Bob, that was a perfect transition. I just came back from up home on the South Shore of Lake Superior near Bayfield, Wisconsin. And everything is so special about this time of year. And it's very special that we all get to be together. thanks for taking some time to do some introductions. It's so good to have you all here, and I'll pass it back to Janelle.
Thanks, Reba. Oh man, I'm excited about the crisp air. I'm going to pass it to John Gostovich to read our preamble today.
John, you're on mute.
That's better. Here I am. I read the preamble a couple of times in preparation for the meeting and was touched by the notion that change is really our responsibility. And it's our responsibility because of what makes the world gentler, smarter, and fairer. So here it is. Grow belongs to us, and we belong to grow. Together, we are working across Barron, Buffalo, Dunn, Pepin, Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix counties to build a world where all of us can flourish and be free. Our organization is a vehicle for communities to build and exercise power to make that world a reality. We live in cities, small towns, and rural areas. We are young and old, rich and poor, white, black, and brown. We will not be divided by false narratives that pit us against each other. We take action together because we believe that change is necessary and it is possible if we courageously leap into the public arena.
John, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you. And we get to hear right now from 4 of our leaders who have done just that. They've courageously leapt into the public arena, and they're leading on the amazing campaigns happening right here at Grow. So the order is Bob, Sam, Bill, and Wendy. So Bob, Sam, Bill, and Wendy. And Bob, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Janelle. Hello, everyone. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Bob Moline. I started with Grow as a fair voting maps volunteer about 4 years ago. Now I'm a board member and one of the leaders for our Bridge the Divide campaign to improve government in Washington and Madison by implementing Final Five voting. Some of you know us from having participated in or hosted a Final Five house party, or maybe you've chatted with us about Final Five at one of the booths we've sponsored at any of the dozen community events we participated in this summer. We continue to do all those activities, and we are speaking to a more targeted audience. We participated with our statewide coalition in informing county and municipal clerks about Final Five voting at their statewide annual meetings. We show them what a ballot might look like when our bill is passed in Madison. As a matter of fact, I saw Cheryl Maplethorpe on here. She and I and a few other volunteers worked with the Center for Civic Design and the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center to create that demonstration ballot. We will continue our conversation with county clerks after the current election season. We recognize that this is just not the right time for them to be taking on extra project. Recently, we've begun having preliminary communication with county board members about how passing Final Five voting will help them better serve their constituents, and to see if they might be interested in voicing support for Final Five to our legislators in Madison. Initially, we're working in Pierce, Dunn, and St. Croix, but at some point we'll be having conversations in other counties as well. Tonight, I'd like to invite you to participate, to be part of this communication process together with us. I'm going to put my contact information. Oh, I see someone has already done that, put my contact information. If you would like to email me to let me know if you're interested in being part of the communication with your own county board member, please send me something at that email that Karen has provided in the chat. And that's all I have tonight. Janelle, back to you. Thank you so much.
Great. And up next is Sam.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Bowen, and I'm a Town of Union resident, about a mile away from Ridge Breeze Dairy, which is planning on expanding to 6,500 cows. At the beginning of October, we held an informational forum on Operation Ordinances, which are local ordinances that will protect our water, roads, and small farms from industrial agriculture. Lisa Dorr from Polk County came to Elmwood, Wisconsin, and gave a presentation to about 100 people about the ordinances that have been passed in her county. Besides some technical difficulties, I would say it was a successful event. Our goal is to get citizens active in their own townships in hopes of enacting these operations ordinances and protecting their communities. Right now, the towns of Maiden Rock and Rock Elm are studying these ordinances and are working with other towns, we are working with other towns to spread this ordinance around the county. We are hopeful that Maiden Rock will pave the way for the county and be the first town to pass this ordinance this year. Their town will be holding a public hearing for their draft operations ordinance on Saturday, November 16th at 10 a.m. at Lund Fire Hall. A registration link will be put in the chat if you are interested in attending. As we've seen in Polk and Burnett County, this ordinance is vital to protecting our water, roads, and more from industrial agriculture. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Sam. And we'll pass it to Bill and then Wendy.
Hey everybody, my name is Bill Hogseth. Can you hear me okay? Are people? Yeah, okay. My name is Bill Hogseth. I'm the organizing director at GROW, and I also live in Dunn County. And since April, I've been working with a team of 6 of our grassroots leaders who in just 6 months have done so much work working to solve problems around housing in Dunn County. We've knocked on over 500 doors to talk to people about their experiences. We've had 3 listening sessions. We've done a digital survey. We've started a chapter of a student chapter at UW Stout for GROW. We also helped to pass a zoning change in Dunn County to allow for the construction of more small homes in people's backyards, which are called accessory dwelling units. It's been a really busy 6 months and a really successful 6 months. And now we are switching gears and we are working on planning a campaign around passing some ordinances that we think are going to help protect renters in Menominee and improve their living conditions, specifically by helping bring proactive rental inspections back to the city of Menominee and allowing the building inspectors to make sure that people are living in safe and healthy residences, renters specifically. So we're in the process of strategizing, we're doing research, we're setting up meetings with key influencers in Menominee, like the mayor and UW Stout, and we're planning our campaign right now. We plan to launch it early next year. If you live in Menominee or Dunn County or are interested at all, you're welcome to be part of our strategizing process. And our next meeting is going to be this Saturday in Menominee, and there's going to be info in the chat if you want to be a part of that. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. And last but not least, Wendy.
Okay. My name is Wendy DePeso, and I was born in Minnesota and live in River Falls Township. Now, in what I think of as a former life, I and a small group of citizens had a reputation for literally fighting City Hall when the then Planning Commission and City Council in Shoreline, Washington State violated the state's own land use laws. Well, $150,000 later, the issue had still not been litigated. We were out of money and I was burned out. Fast forward to here in River Falls. After my experience in Washington State, I was occupied with writing and being a good steward of the land we call home. Politics for me was in the past, but I was invited to a GROW house party, and it was thrilling to find that a person's political views or party affiliations were irrelevant. People were working collaboratively to solve local problems. Instead of looking back, I jumped forward. The All in Favor campaign is a movement of ordinary people to elect local leaders we can work with to address our most urgent issues, such as housing justice, improving and protecting our water supply, and supporting small family farms. The words, "there is more that unites us than divides us," is not just a saying, it is a reality. We all need governments that work for us, our values, and the future we're building. Our local governments, town boards, village boards, city councils, school boards, county boards, they're making decisions that directly impact our lives. They're making these decisions all year long. We hope that you'll join us on Saturday, November 16th from 2 to 5 p.m. at the Lion's Den in Woodville. We'll be officially launching 4 county campaign teams from St. Croix, Dunn, Polk, and Pierce. You'll hear about the races and places we'll be working next spring. You'll hear about powerful people in local offices that can help move, grow campaigns. And we'll invite you to join us in this urgent and uplifting local electoral work. See the link in the chat. Thank you.
Amazing. A big round of applause for all our leaders doing amazing work, leading in amazing ways on our campaigns. This is how we build people power in Western Wisconsin. And now we get to dive into the freedom to vote in Wisconsin. So one tool that all of these campaigns end up using at some point or another is voting, right? That's one way that we can create change. It's one way that our voice can be heard. And we care deeply about voting in Wisconsin. This is a principle that's like core to us in Wisconsin, core to the United States. It's something that was set out in the U.S. Declaration of Independence. So 72 years before Wisconsin became a state, the founders of our country decided that we wanted the consent of the governed. And this is a concept, that principle that is really, really important to us, so much so that when the leaders of GROW got together and decided that we wanted to form an organization, one of the really key parts of our mission statement is to have a voice in the decisions, in shaping the decisions that impact us, which involves voting. So this is a concept that's really, really important to me too, and I want to share a little bit with you about why that is important to me. We mentioned the Declaration of Independence was in 1776, but many of you know that women didn't have the right to vote until 1920. Women organized for over 70 years, doing exactly the kind of work that we're doing here. And in 1920, the women finally got the right to vote. And my great granny, that's pictured here, I called her Granny. She was Linnea Ludwig, was the first generation of women in my family that had the right to vote during their entire life. So when she became an adult, she was immediately able to vote. And she voted with a huge passion. She was married to Otto Ludwig, with whom she had 2 children. Otto then left to go to California, left her in Minneapolis with 2 young children, and in the 1920s, it was really hard being a divorced woman with 2 children. And I'm really grateful that every generation of women in my family has had a little bit of an easier go in life. My grandma worked for the airport. She did a lot of typing. She had really strong fingers on those old typewriters. She did a lot of filing. She did a lot of note taking, but there was quite a ceiling on what she could accomplish at that moment in time. My mom had way more opportunities, and I have even more opportunities than my mom does. And I'm really grateful for all of that change that we've been able to do that was really kicked off with the 19th Amendment and the right to vote for women. But despite having the right to vote for 100 years, 5 generations, there's still a pretty significant gap between what men have and what women have in the world right now. In 2022, women earned 84 cents for every dollar that a man earned doing the same job with the same background. In the US, 60% of the wealth is owned by men. In the US Senate, only 25% of the members are women. We have yet to have a female president. only 10% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are women. So the reality is that in the United States, women have less money and less power. Even with 5 generations of voting, we haven't quite caught up yet. And we could do the same kind of analysis for people of color, whether they be descendants of slaves, whether they be Asian immigrants. And this has real repercussions in our lives. So what does this mean to me? It means that I'm either going to work more years or retire with less money than if I had been born a man. It means that I've had fewer examples of female leadership in my life. I'm now the executive director of GROW, but in past roles, I was less likely to be promoted than my male colleagues. And we know that sexism, racism, inequality are extremely complex issues that we're dealing with today. Having the right to vote and having it for a very, very long time helps us bend the arc of history towards justice. So when there are attempts to silence our voices, disenfranchising voters, I want to understand what's happening because I know it's going to impact people's lives really on a visceral level. So no matter our gender, our race, how long we've lived in this country, we need the principles of the consent of the governed at work in our lives. Whether we're a white man, a divorced mom, whether we have a lot of money in our pocket or very little, we all deserve to have a voice in the decisions that impact us. And that is why, before we dig into the constitutional amendment that's on our ballot this November, I want to take a step back with you all, and I want to think about what has happened in our country over time that has expanded or reduced our freedom to vote in the US. And I know I'm in a room with a bunch of smart people who love history and love our country, so I'm love to hear from you. You can put it in the chat, you can come off mute. What are some of the milestones in expanding or reducing our freedom to vote in the US? I've already talked about the 19th Amendment, which gave the right to vote to women. Anything else y'all can think of? Yeah, Voting Rights Act in 1965, correct. Does anybody remember what happened right before the Voting Rights Act of 1965? What was happening?
Mostly in the South, very, very brave African Americans stood up to Jim Crow and showed how hard it was to be fully fledged, recognized, enfranchised Americans in those states. And the Voting Rights Act was one way the federal government responded to the bravery and the anguish and the injustice that flourished around Jim Crow.
Yeah. So a whole bunch of organizing, the kind of organizing that we did, the kind of organizing that women did before the 19th Amendment. Yeah. Great. There's so much good stuff. Yeah. So someone mentions being purged, voter rolls are being purged in some states, ending gerrymandering in Wisconsin, which we did. Hooray for us. Yeah. These are all real things that have happened. So it hasn't been like really clear. It's been back and forth, right? So we're here's a little timeline I've made for you. We're not going to go through it all, but I want to share, we had the Declaration of Independence in 1776. That was white landowning men could vote. It wasn't until 1828 that non-landowning men could vote. And then we had the 14th and the 15th Constitutional Amendment, which gave the right to vote to Black people. There was no discrimination based on race or previous condition of servitude. And then we heard about, someone mentioned the Jim Crow laws. So there was a huge backlash when so many new people were able to vote. There were then all kinds of laws that came into place to reduce the ability of people to be able to vote. And some of these were like literacy tests, polling tax, white-only primary. Who do you think was being disenfranchised in those laws? Like literacy tests. It seems like, well, that's common sense. Everyone should be able to read to vote. Who was being disenfranchised when those laws were being passed? Immigrants?
Immigrants, depending on the time, it was ex-slaves or their children and grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you'd been generations of slave in your family and then all of a sudden you were freed, you maybe didn't know how to read yet, right? So it was going to be hard for you to pass a literacy test right away and be able to cast a vote. So a lot of those laws that happened right after the constitutional amendment passed were to disenfranchise poor people, people of color. Where shortly after that, we had the amendment that gave women the right to vote. Really condensed version is a lot of Black men went to Europe and fought in World War II, and they came back to the United States and they were like, whoa, I wasn't a second-class citizen in Europe. I'd like to have that at home too. And part of that led to the Civil Rights Movement, all the organizing that happened that led up to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But unfortunately, right now, we're seeing some of that being reversed. In 2013, there was a decision by the US Supreme Court that really gutted the Voting Rights Act. And since then, we've seen some of those things that people put in the chat that were like voting purges. Millions of people have been purged off the voting rolls. Voting rights laws like we have in Wisconsin right now, where 11% of people, of Americans, don't have a government issued ID, but 25% of Black people don't have a government issued ID. So when there's ID law requirements, you're actually increasing the number of poor people and people of color who can't vote. And now I'm going to bring us back to right here, right now. So we've seen this arc, like expanded voting rights, diminished, expanded, and now we're in some cases diminishing them again. And right now on our ballot in November, we have a constitutional amendment that would change just our Wisconsin Constitution, so not the US Constitution, just our Wisconsin Constitution. Our Constitution currently says that every United States citizen can cast a ballot, and this referendum, this constitutional amendment, would change it to only citizens. And changing the language from every to only is a way for lawmakers to further limit our right to vote, including implementing proof of citizenship requirements, despite knowing that 1 in 10 US citizens don't have documents to prove their citizenship. On top of that, we already have really safe elections. We're going to hear from Roxann and Andrew in a little bit, who are county clerks, and they're going to explain to us the really careful processes that they undertake to make sure that only citizens vote, and it's all done with a lot of safety and security. So we already have a lot of tests, a lot of safeguards to make sure that only citizens are voting. So we want to vote no on this constitutional amendment because it's a way of disenfranchising voters. It's not going to make our elections more safe and secure. It's going to make it more difficult for more people to vote. And a lot of us on this call, we've already worked really, really hard to have a voice, right? We won fair maps. It's amazing. This November election, we get to elect our Wisconsin senators, our Wisconsin Assembly people using these fair maps that we fought really hard to get. So now's the time to take that energy and get the vote no out on this constitutional amendment. We want the consent of the governed. We want a voice in the decisions that impact us. We want everyone to have that. And as John Lewis said, democracy is not a state, it's an act. It's always requires our care and attention. So that was a lot of talking. I want to hear from you all. Any comments, any thoughts? How does this resonate with you? You can put it in the chat or come off mute. Sarah, what's going through your mind right now?
I guess I'm just wondering how, what the thinking was behind the people who proposed this amendment in the first place. Like, it seems kind of sneaky and nefarious, but I don't really know what led up to it.
Yeah. There's been a concerted effort over and over to disenfranchise poor people, people of color, from being able to vote and create the change that they need. We've seen this through the voter ID law. We're seeing it again here. We saw it through gerrymandering, like people not wanting to have everyone having a voice, but wanting to control the outcome.
I think too, this puts everybody, not everybody, but I mean a higher amount of people at the risk for being questioned when they vote about their name, about who they are, about what kind of papers they have to prove that. That all comes into play here too.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
I'll say too, Janelle, I think this also just plays into the sowing of distrust in our election processes that we've seen over the last several years.
But how did they come up with just changing that one word, you know? How did they focus on that?
Some really good strategists. We need to be good strategists that way too. And just this is passed in several other states already. So this isn't like new to Wisconsin. Yeah. All right. All right, you all. So I want to pass it over to Chris now. I'm really, really glad to have Chris with us tonight. Some of you may already know Chris from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. She was a facilitator at Grassroots School 2 years ago. And one of the pillars of our democracy is our public schools, and Chris and her colleagues and many other leaders across the state, year in and year out, are ensuring that our public schools are a place where children can thrive. So I'm going to pass the mic to Chris now to share how the constitutional amendments impact our public schools and what else might be on our ballot in this election season. Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm pretty honored to be in this tent with you all tonight. Yeah, I've been involved with public schools since I started teaching in them like 40 years ago, and have some experience too on school board or whatever, but I truly do this work now with earnest, since the fair maps are kind of a way to make things better for our kids in our public schools. So tonight I want to point out the No Yes Wisconsin message going into the final 2 weeks prior to the November 5th elections. I am the Northwest Wisconsin organizer for the Wisconsin Public Education Network. I want you all to know we are a fiercely nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy coalition, connecting public education champions to information, actions, and each other to be a strong collective voice for the excellent public schools that all children and families in Wisconsin deserve. We provide the facts. Sounds like a lot of the work you all do, correct? But you all need to know the angst here. Over half of the 421 public school districts in Wisconsin have been forced to referendum in 2024 to a very broken funding system that has been legislated in Wisconsin. It's been longstanding. It's been broken for a very long time. Wisconsin Public Radio reported just recently that at the conclusion of the November 5th election, $6 billion will have been requested of taxpayers by their public schools. Referendum is the only way a district can go above the revenue caps that were set way back in 93 and implemented in 1994. Certainly 50% of districts going to referendum kind of indicates how broken the funding system is. So let me tell you a few of the Western Wisconsin districts going to referendum, and this is just a small list, actually. These districts I'm working with: Prescott, Eau Claire, Owen Withy, Marshfield, Superior, Butternut, Ashland, La Crosse, Washburn, South Shore, just as I said, to name a few. And yes, some of these refs are for capital improvements like buildings and upgrades, but there are many more operational refs as well that will be used to maintain programming, keep staff, and keep the lights on, which is really hard to believe that that's happening in our state. So remember, when you talk with friends, family at the doors, I've done tons of doors, please share the idea of voting no on that constitutional amendment, but yes for kids, because both of them will be on the ballot. And then join us at the joint finance hearings after all this is over and help us fix public school funding, because most kids in Wisconsin go to public schools. Also, remember too, if you have to flip your ballot and that yes vote is on the other side, that might be a message when you're interacting with your community. So please use me for presentations, funding facts. I can even figure out the privatization data for your Senate and Assembly districts. I'm here for referendum help, and I'm here to just help and serve. So thanks so much. Anybody have any questions?
School referendums or anything else, funding for public schools? Chris is the expert.
I'm old. Learn a lot over time. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the yes for the refs?
Clear. Love it.
Good.
Love the saying. Cool. Thank you so much, Chris. Really fun to have you here. And yes, we want our children to be able to thrive at well-funded schools.
There is a question.
Oh, thank you.
Is there a concerted push to privatize schools? Well, I'm not going to get into all of that, but I could certainly come and you can get in touch with me. I'll put my information in the chat. But presently, after the last increase in the last biennium budget was the largest increase in the state's history to the privatization piece for private schools. Presently, we have some independent charter schools and some private schools that are getting more per pupil than we are now in public schools. So yes, I'm hoping with the new maps that the conversation in Madison will be a little more robust on what we're actually doing with school funding, because that funding is taken from our public school kids and funneled in other places. So I'll put my information in the chat too. So if you ever want other information, you can get in touch with me. But there's a big push. The Green Bay area, Brown County, I only look at what happens there, comes across the state. And if you would look at their privatization numbers and the money that is being spent on private schools, it is, you wouldn't even believe it.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we're going to move on to the last section of our meeting here tonight. We've spent a lot of time talking about what's on our ballot and how we can lead to protect our freedoms and our future, but none of this would be possible if it weren't for the election heroes that make our election work. This is the folks that work hard to ensure that we have safe and secure elections every single time. I'm curious to see in the room, raise your hand if you're a clerk or have been, if you're an election worker, poll worker, anyone that has anything to do with, all right, some elections. And awesome. And I can't see everyone on my screen. Yeah, Bob, Andrew, John, Lisa, Kay, amazing, amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for the work you're doing. This is amazing. It takes a lot of people to put on a great election. And we're really fortunate tonight because we have Andrew from Dunn County. He's our county clerk in Dunn County. Roxann, Buffalo County Clerk. Give them a warm, warm welcome. They've done an amazing job and are about to tell us how they know that we can be confident that every vote will get counted and certified. And I think I'm passing it off to Roxann first. Roxann, take it away.
Okay. My part of the presentation is going to be how we prepare for the election. It's quite a lengthy process to get ready. It starts with helping candidates that want to run for election fill out the paperwork and directing them on what their steps are to get their name on the ballot. And once that process is done and their signatures are turned in, and I've reviewed all the documents to make sure they're right, then we move on to getting machines programmed and ballots made. And that process is very detail oriented. You need to make sure that how the candidate's name, how they wanted it on there, shows up correctly. There's spreadsheets and charts you need to fill out for the programming company. Then it's sent back to you for review. We also have to send it to the Elections Commission so they can review it. They look at the format to make sure that it's readable for everybody and it's a standard format. So no matter where you would go to vote, you know, they're all going to see the same format. My office also helps with like the absentee ballot process and making sure that those are entered correctly, because every voter is able to go to My Vote and see if their ballot has been issued, if it's been returned. And we've actually had a really big push on that this year. People are really checking that to make sure that their clerk sent the ballot out, that they received it back, because they are very concerned that their vote be counted. And part of our process is to make sure that the clerks know what's out there, because they can request that ballot through My Vote. And so we let the clerks know, hey, you have a pending absentee in there. You should have got an email on it. Let's get it out. When my ballots come in and my machine cartridges come in, we make sure that the clerks come in and pick them up. They have to sign off that they have them. It's a checks and balances to make sure nothing is tampered with before the election. Then they do their public testing of the machines. The seals are put on the machines to make sure that it's protected for election day. So there are lots of protections in the process of getting ready to make sure that we can put people at ease, that their votes are going to be counted right. The machines are tested with a pre-lat test and then a public test that is open to the public to come and see. I don't know that a lot of people in my county take advantage of that, but it is a rather lengthy test to make sure those machines work correctly. And it's a very important test. So I encourage people to go and watch one of them once, because it is interesting to know that it is tested and verified for the voter to ensure that everything's done correctly. So then voting day happens, and then the certification process that Andrew will talk about happens.
Hey, thank you, Roxann. Any questions for Roxann?
Yeah, thanks, Roxann. I'm wondering, when do the tests that you just mentioned happen, and how can people find out when they happen?
So the municipal clerks have to notice either by posting or publication in a local newspaper at least 48 hours prior to their testing. It cannot begin until this election, October 26th. So they do have their cartridges now. They're in a safe, secure location, and then they will publish when they're going to have their tests. So people need to watch like their municipal website, the local newspaper, even contact their clerk and ask, when is it going to be? Because we'd like to come and see it.
Thank you.
Awesome. I just want to highlight the resource that Roxann shared, the myvote.wisconsin.gov. It's like awesome. You can also see what's on your ballot. You can find out who your municipal clerk is, where your polling location is, if your registration is all in order. So really great one-stop shop, myvote.wisconsin.gov. Any other questions for Roxann? Curiosities you have? This is your chance to.
This is John. I've got a quick question for Roxann. As a county clerk, given your efforts to create chains of custody, check the cartridges, keep them safe, invite people in for public testing, to do all of these things to increase the amount of confidence and rigor and double checking in your system, what's it like to hear people grumble and mutter about the system being easy to hack, sloppy, amenable to, fraud or shenanigans? Because that doesn't happen, isn't likely to happen, but there is such a lack of confidence now in the work that you perform for the public. And I'm just wondering if you talk about that for a minute.
It is disconcerting because I take a lot of pride in my job and making sure that everything is done correctly and to our statutory guidelines. For the 2020 election, was also the town clerk for my municipality. And my mother-in-law was one of my election workers. And that was our first year with the ICE tabulating machines. And she had found out that they were made by Dominion. And she was just extremely upset that I would do something like that and get a machine like that. So I invited her as a poll worker to come to a training for the poll workers and to the public test to show her how they work and show her the work that I've done as county clerk, what I'm doing as the town clerk to ensure that her vote is counted correctly. The particular machine we have here in Buffalo County has the option of showing on the screen what the ballot is being counted as, so that the voter can have that extra reassurance that what they put on that ballot is what is counted. And so that's what I had turned on. It's a feature you have to turn on the machine. And I turned it on in my township so that she could see it. And then my town board was like, hey, she can't be the only one that has those questions. How can you help these other people? So by showing them that the steps we take for security, ensuring them that the machines are not hooked up to internet at all and they don't have a modem on them, that when the votes are done being counted at the end of the night, that they have to call me as county clerk with the results, and the steps that I take to ensure that everything adds up correctly.
Hooray.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate the work you do for all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roxann. It was really great to get a more concrete understanding what happens before Election Day. And now Andrew is going to share with us, like, after Election Day, then what? Andrew, I pass it over to you.
Right, the then what? That's exciting. And then what in this particular election, we don't know, right? That's like the biggest concern for all of us. I want to first give a huge shout out to Roxann, my Buffalo County clerk. and the amazing work that she has done, and all the county clerks that have done all the work to organize everything across the 72 counties of this great state, because it's, as Roxann touched on, it's a lot of preparation on work and stress and anxiety, and we're all feeling that. And also to my Dunn County crew, John Calabrese happens to be one of our Dunn County supervisors, a very respected, very admirable, very well loved Dunn County supervisor. But he heard me talk a little bit last week about not only the election process, but also the threats that are happening to election officials, not only across our state in Wisconsin, but also across the nation. And so my job is to talk a little bit about the closing of the election and what goes on with certification of the election. But also I want to talk about the threats, because I don't want that to be lost in the sound bites and the chatter that's going on. So Roxann did an amazing job talking about the prep and what happens. And so after the polls close at 8 p.m., and all of us have done everything we can to prep for the election, order all the ballots, get everything in order, make sure everything is spelled correctly, then the election happens. And it's very exciting. But then the election closes at 8 p.m. And as long as anyone's in line at the polling location, the chief inspector will stick a election official at the end of that line on election day and announce it is 8 p.m. The polls are closed. Anyone in line can vote. Anyone after that is not allowed to vote. And then we'll stand there and then, dissuade anyone else from coming into the line after 8 p.m. to vote. So I think that's really crucial, because that's the law and that's what we all follow. So after that, as long as everyone in line has been processed and after all of the absentee ballots have been processed, we kind of encourage everyone to, if you have a break, which might be challenging during this particular presidential election, if you have a break in the day to process any absentee ballots you receive, we always encourage people to process them 5 at a time, because it's manageable, right? Like, here's the 5 people, absentee ballots, we're going to process these. If the third one, we've received, it's in a sealed envelope, it's certified, it's signed off, but it's covered in wine and chocolate, like, don't feed that through the machine. That's going to be a problem. So we always encourage people to do it 5 at a time, because that's the best practice. Because if you can take that third or fourth ballot out and then you have to remake it with 2 election officials, 1 from each party, that's the process. After all that's done, at the very end of the night, the municipal clerks and the municipal board of canvass perform their municipal board of canvass, which is basically saying they review the tapes off the tabulators and they say, yes, the Harris Walls ticket received this many votes, the Trump Vance ticket received this many votes based on the tape. And they record all that information and then they sign off on it saying, like, yes, we certify that the tabulators have stated and the electors have processed this many votes for all of these different offices. As Roxann can attest, that information is all transferred in Wisconsin. That information is all transferred to the county clerk, because we have a decentralized system in Wisconsin. And then the county clerks tabulate and gather all that data kind of across all the municipalities. And then they kind of provide here's the general consensus of everything that's happened, right? So in a spreadsheet at a county clerk's office level, it might say all the different offices, all the different municipalities, and then who all voted for everyone. So on election night, the municipal board of canvass, the municipalities, those townships, those villages, and those cities sign off and say, yes, these are all the votes that we've tabulated. Typically, the Monday after the election, so in this case, it would be Veterans Day, unless the county offices close that day, it might be the 12th. Counties have until 8:30 a.m. on the Tuesday after an election to convene their county board of canvass to certify the elections. right? So we had the county, or I'm sorry, the municipal version on election night. The county has about until the Monday or Tuesday after the election to certify the election. And then we convene our board of canvass. We go through every single municipality and every single race to ensure that the election night reporting matches the tapes and the proceedings that have happened at the election. Oftentimes this can be important because if you're calling in election results, which Roxann and I both have municipalities that call in their election results, right? It can be confusing. Some people might report overvotes or undervotes as write-ins. Some people might report information incorrectly. But the point is that the County Board of Canvass takes all of those municipalities. We bring them all together afterwards, and we go through every single municipality, every single race to verify that the election results on the night of the election match what was reported. And if there's any discrepancies, like, okay, so somebody reported an overvote for their write-in for the school district of Eau Claire, we can adjust that at the County Board of Canvass. After all that's done, we certify that every County Board of Canvass member, which consists of the county clerk. It consists of one member of the Democratic Party and one member of the Republican Party. So there's those three officials. It always includes those three officials, sign off on everything, and then they will submit that information to the state of Wisconsin, right? So 72 counties submit all their information, and then it bubbles down into the state of Wisconsin information. The state of Wisconsin will then go through and certify their election results by tabulating what was submitted online through the Board of Canvass and what was submitted in person with their Board of Canvass, to then produce the election results that will go to the federal level, for example, for certification on January 6th. So it's an incredibly extensive process. All the voting information is triple checked on election night. All the information is double, triple checked on the County Board of Canvass. And then all that information is gone to the state, where it is checked again before it is sent off to the federal level. So my whole point in saying this is that it should be reassuring to a lot of people that there are many different steps. It's not just, oh, someone transmitted some information. No, everything is triple or quadruple checked at every single level of the certification process to make sure that, yes, indeed, the people that are elected have been elected for a reason, because the municipal, the county, and the state and the federal levels have all certified those election results. That was kind of a lot of information. I'm sorry for sharing all that in a short amount of time. Karen had asked a question about what is an overvote. So an overvote is basically an example of, and this doesn't necessarily happen in the fall elections, but like with a spring election where there might be, you can vote for 3 school board members, but a person votes for 4. Right? They vote for 4 members, you can only vote for 3, and you feed your ballot into the tabulator, and then it errors you out and says, oh, you voted for 4, you can only vote for 3. And the elector, the voter, says, oh, nope, I want to cast that ballot. So that overvote essentially is like that this person voted for 4 offices. So essentially it nulls all offices in that school board race because you've overvoted. You've cast too many votes for the offices that are allowed. Does that make sense, Karen? I hope that makes sense. So that's kind of the process with that. I know that was a little bit longer than anticipated. So what are some questions that everyone has based on not only what Roxann diligently explained with the certification process and everything that we do behind the scenes to prep for an election, but also the certification process after we get done?
So way back when ex-Supreme Court Justice Gableman was looking for discrepancies and fraud and chaos in the system. Andrew, given how the system actually operates, what is it that people are worried about?
John, that's a great question. So all states within the Union of the United States of America are have an option to be part of ERIC, the Election Registration Information Center, right? So there are certain states, particularly in the South, that have chosen to opt out of ERIC for whatever political reason. We're talking about like Texas, Florida, some other states. What essentially happens is in the state of Wisconsin, whenever anyone registers to vote, they have to either produce a Wisconsin ID, which includes their driver's license, a state issued ID, or any other documentation, a passport, or anything else. If they produce a Wisconsin driver's license, that driver's license information is through ERIC checked with a subsequent state of the states that participate in ERIC to basically verify that you're not registered in multiple states at the same time, right? What's really, really helpful about the ERIC system is that after an election, right, if you voted in Wisconsin, but you're a snowbird and you happen to have also voted in, well, not Florida, but in a different state like Georgia, for example, those systems talk to each other. And so our WIS vote system, the Wisconsin Election Commission system, talks with all these other states and says like, hey, if somebody voted here, somebody voted there, not okay. That's where we can turn a case over for fraud to the district attorneys, not only from the state of Wisconsin, but also that other state where they might have voted. I want to reiterate the fact that this is a very, very, very slim thing in the state of Wisconsin. There's less than 1% of all voters. It's actually less than 0.7% of all voters in the state of Wisconsin that are ever even turned over for fraudulent activity. And most often than not, it's because with the federal rules, right, we have to send out ballots 47 days before a federal election. Well, I don't know about you, but I barely remember what I was doing yesterday, let alone 47 days before, right? And we often get college students or people who are confused. And if a college student voted in their college town, so like I'm in Menominee, so a UW Stout student, but they requested an absentee ballot from the exotic municipality of, let's say, Racine. Right, so they got an absentee ballot from Racine 47 days before the election. They forgot that they voted. They decided to show up on election day and vote. They can certainly do that, except that the system catches all of that. And they say, no. You can't cast a vote here in Menominee and cast a vote here in Racine. That doesn't work. And so that's a situation where it gets turned over to the district attorney for prosecution. There have been a lot of questions that have happened about, individuals who are pursuing their citizenship process. You don't necessarily have to be a citizen in the United States to receive a driver's license, for example. And several other states have a provision where it says like not a US citizen on the top of their driver's license. And there have been some questions, and especially in certain political circles, there have been some questions and concerns about people who are not US citizens voting. When you register to vote, it asks you 4 questions, right? It asks, are you a US citizen? Are you 18 years of age or older? Have you lived in your supposed municipality 28 days before the election? And are you a essentially convicted felon? Are you serving a sentence for felony conviction? Are you parole? Everything like that. There's been a lot of speak and a lot of talk about people who are doing that, and they're registering to vote and they don't have a driver's license. Anybody who's issued a driver's license is here legally. illegal immigrants and illegal aliens are not allowed to obtain a driver's license. So anybody who has been issued a driver's license in the state of Wisconsin is on that path towards citizenship. And if you risk by voting in an election, for example, which is cross-checked with the DMV, your opportunity to be a future citizen, you will be deported. This has happened very few times, but enough times where it's worth mentioning, where people have been pursuing the process of citizenship. They have a driver's license, they're here legally, they're with a immigrant visa, whatever it might be. But if they vote in an election, that reference is cross-checked and they are immediately deported. And it ruins their entire chance of all those years that they've worked towards citizenship. So my whole point of this is saying there's a lot of checks and balances that Roxann and I and all the county clerks and municipal clerks are doing to make sure that, you know, only legal US citizens are voting. But it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that this particular Constitution amendment is really exclusionary and not necessary for the process that we currently exist, for double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking that only US citizens are voting in this election. John, I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, thanks. I mean, listening to both you and Roxann explain the care and complexity to make sure that the system begins with and maintains integrity throughout, explains why everybody who's looked for shenanigans has been pretty much unable to come up with any significant problems in the way we conduct elections in Wisconsin and in the United States. So thank you both. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is really, really great. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for Roxann and Andrew. We're so grateful. You are election heroes yourself. You're training a bunch of other election workers, and it's all trickling down to safe and secure elections that we can all feel really, really good about. So really, really thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here tonight. Really appreciate it. So we all dove into a lot of things tonight. We talked about voting no on the constitutional amendment, voting yes for school funding, and we heard from Roxann and Andrew how we can be 100% confident that we have safe and secure elections in Wisconsin and across the country. So I want to take just a few minutes. I think we're going to take 5 minutes. We're in a room full of people that are dedicated to making our world a better place. Everyone wants to step up. A lot of people are working on campaigns, have worked on fair maps. And now is our chance to have this last 2-week period where we can still have an impact on what's happening in this election. So we're going to go into breakout rooms for just 5 minutes. You're going to get to meet one new person, 5 minutes, an amazing person that lives in your community and wants to make the election a success as well. And I want you to just share, who are you going to share this information that you learned tonight with? What is your plan to make that happen, and why is that important to you? So Reba's going to send us off into breakout rooms for 5 minutes. Think about, how will you share this? How many people will you share this information with? How are you going to do that? And why is this important to you? So let's head out and we'll come back in 5 minutes. All right, welcome back. Welcome back.
I met a fellow River Falls person.
Hooray. Were you with Tammy? Tammy and Grace, were you?
I was with David, and I asked what brought him to Grow, and he went to Grow Fest and then was invited to this. And we talked about housing for seniors on fixed incomes and how rent keeps going up. And I ran into another person in River Falls who's dealing with that. So maybe there's a coalition or group that can form in River Falls to not just Menominee, you know, to address what they're facing.
Yeah, love it. Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I'm curious to hear from some of you what's something that you're committing to. You can put it in the chat, or if someone wants to come off mute and share, what is something that you've committed to doing in the next 2 weeks on those 3 items?
In terms of talking about all 3 of the items, we will tomorrow and then closer to the election get as many people as we can with as many kinds of colorful signs and flags as we can manage over Highway 94 between 4 and 6 p.m. to carry signs and jump up and down and wave and smile and remind people about the issues that matter to us.
Yeah, awesome, great. Well, everyone, do what we know that one-on-one conversations are the most impactful. People you know, people you trust. Talk with them about what you learned tonight and follow through on your commitment. What is it that you need to do to make sure that you're going to be able to do what you committed to tonight, whether it's putting some time on your calendar, putting a post-it note on your mirror, whatever your system is, put it in place so that you're sure to be able to follow through in your commitment and sharing this great information that we learned tonight. We learned about the constitutional amendment, voting no, funding our schools, voting yes on the school referendums, and heard from Andrew and Roxann about all the steps that are being taken to make sure that we have safe and secure elections through the certification process. Also, GROW is a local, nonpartisan, grassroots organizing. Make a donation. That is what powers this work, is through the money that we get from people in our communities. So make a donation to continue to support this work. And then if there's anything that's like perked your mind, if you want to meet with an organizer, we want to hear from you. What's important to you? What do you care about? What is keeping you up at night? We have the power when we come together to make change in our community, and we want to hear from you what's important to you. So feel free to put it in the chat if you want to meet with an organizer. You can reach out to us through our website. You probably have some of our email addresses. We really want to hear from you. And I'm going to pass it over to Danny now to do a brief debrief. This is a different kind of big tent meeting than we've ever done before, so really want to hear how this worked for you.
Yes, so we will be debriefing the meeting. What I want to hear from people is what was good about this meeting and what would they change in a future meeting. So we'll start with what are some things you enjoyed about this meeting, some pluses from this meeting. Feel free to either come off mute if you have one, or if you want to put something in the chat, you can do that as well. And I will type them down and make sure we're capturing them.
I really like the 2 speakers that talked about the election and the details of how that all happens.
I agree. That was very informative, and I'm seeing that in the chat as well, that it was informative. I'm also seeing updates from each campaign. Well organized. Enthusiasm and summaries. Very grounding to be with democracy warriors. Thank you, Beth. Do you want to say any more? I know you're doing a lot of good work in League of Women Voters. Probably a busy couple weeks before the election. Any other pluses from anyone? Okay, what about deltas, things you would change? I know one for me is making sure we don't have to put a passcode in on Zoom. Did that hold anyone up for a few minutes trying to get in?
Yes.
Passcode?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably my fault. I probably didn't set the settings right on Zoom, so sorry about that. But I'm glad that everyone was able to get in eventually. Anything else that people would change? Tough time with a lot happening. Anything else? Last call for any deltas or things we would change. All right. Cool. Well, thank you for evaluating, and I think Janelle will close us out.
Yeah. All right, you all, we know that when we come together, we can do amazing things. We know this because we came together and organized on fair maps and we won. We get to take that energy into this election, voting in the new districts, voting no on our constitutional amendment, supporting our schools, and celebrating our election heroes. Democracy is not a state, it's an act. We're taking action to support what we love and having the consent of the governed, which is what we want. So now is the time to act. And at Grow, we love ending our Zoom meetings with the messiest, most fun chants that you can possibly imagine. So take yourselves off of mute, and we're gonna chant our way out. We're gonna do it 3 times, and then the meeting is adjourned. So I'm gonna say grow and you say power, because that is the way that we create change in our community, by building people power like we're doing tonight. Thank you so much for being here, and let's go out with a messy Zoom chant. So grow.
Power.
Grow.
Power.
Grow.
Power.
Great. Awesome, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great next couple weeks.